The Journey to Connection, How Early Humans Found Family. Welcome to The Explainer, everyone. You know, it's a pretty wild thought, but your modern brain, the exact one you're using right now to process my words, is actually still hardwired for the Ice Age. Today, we're diving into what is arguably the single most important transition in all of human history. We're going to trace the ultimate collective hero's journey of our ancestors. Because look, we so often think about human evolution strictly in terms of physical changes, right? Walking upright, or the invention of stone tools. But today, we're looking at an evolution of the heart and the mind. We're exploring the monumental leap from total, absolute isolation to the creation of kinship and family. It's an absolutely fascinating story of survival, empathy, and connection, and I am so excited to guide you through it today. Let's jump in. Picture the stark and solitary dawn of early man. Look at the harsh, blazing colors of that sky, the jagged rocks, those barren, unforgiving trees. And right there, right in the center, you have a single, solitary figure facing out into an unimaginably vast landscape. When we think about the very beginning of the human story, this is exactly where it starts, alone. Think about that. There are no walls, there are no safety nets, and most importantly, there is absolutely no one watching his back. Every single rustle in the bushes, every weird shadow stretching across that canyon represents a potential lethal threat. The moment-to-moment tension of this era was just immense.
In the vastness of the ancient world, absolute isolation meant ultimate vulnerability and silence. I really want you to let that word sink in for a second. Silence. If you fell, if you caught a bad bug, or if a predator started creeping up in the tall grass, there was absolutely no one to call out to. Ultimate vulnerability means your margin for error was exactly zero. None. You had to be on high alert constantly. And biologically speaking, prolonged isolation causes extreme physiological stress in humans. Mostly because our nervous systems intuitively know we just cannot survive alone. The cortisol levels of early humans must have been absolutely staggering. Survival was a grueling solo task, day in and day out.
But then something absolutely incredible happened. We enter what we can call the shift, from 1 to 2. This is the pivot point for our entire species. It was the realization that enduring the harshness of this world all alone was a losing battle, and that 2 sets of eyes are infinitely better than 1. And what's super fascinating here is that active cooperation, where individuals deliberately share goals and split labor to this degree, is surprisingly rare in the animal kingdom. So this wasn't just a simple numbers game, it was a total cognitive revolution. It was the very first spark of human cooperation, a radical new strategy for staying alive. Finding a reliable prehistoric roommate was, quite literally, a matter of life and death.
So, that solitary wanderer, tense against the elements, soon gives way to a duo emerging from the cave. One carries a large wooden club for defense, while the other gathers up a bundle of firewood. What we are witnessing here is the birth of the division of labor. They are actively sharing the physical burden of existence. This monumental leap from individual peril to shared survival is captured right here. They aren't just, tolerating each other's presence or fighting over the same patch of berries. They are teaming up and working together toward a shared outcome. The crushing vulnerability of isolation is finally being replaced by the strength of partnership.
Step 1, shared survival. Step 2, communication. Step 3, empathy. So how exactly did we get from simply carrying sticks together to actually caring deeply about one another? Well, it happened in these logical yet really profound steps. Step 1 is purely practical, right? Imagine trying to coordinate a hunt or gather food safely. You gather, I'll watch for danger. Makes sense. But you cannot successfully execute that without Step 2, communication. Hunting together without speaking means gestures, eye contact, and shared intent become totally vital. You have to signal where the water is or warn of a predator. And once you start communicating and relying on someone for your very life, you naturally arrive at Step 3, empathy. When your survival partner gets hurt, suddenly you are vulnerable too. Empathy wasn't just some warm, fuzzy feeling. It evolved as a critical survival mechanism. You begin to care for them not just as a tool, but as a deeply connected being.
The communal anchor. Once empathy entered the equation, early humans were primed for the next massive evolutionary leap. We move from these temporary, pragmatic alliances into something far more permanent. This is the true narrative climax of our ancestors' story. It's the pivotal moment when basic survival partnerships blossomed into rooted, interdependent communities. But what anchored them, right? What was the center of gravity that pulled these wandering, terrified individuals out of the dark and into a tight-knit circle? It was the fire, the hearth. Look at this. We are no longer looking at solitary figures dwarfed by a massive, scary landscape. Instead, we see an intimate group gathered securely around the communal flames.
Notice the dynamic, cooperative interactions happening here. You've got some tending to the fire, while another prepares early root vegetables and flatbreads on a heated stone. The sheer physical proximity of their bodies shows deep mutual reliance. Now, obviously, the fire provided essential heat and kept the predators at bay, but it also did something totally revolutionary. It created the concept of leisure time. Humans no longer had to just go to sleep at sundown simply to hide in the dark. The fire forced people to sit facing one another, it extended the day, and it created this vital, safe space for connection.
Which brings us to a concept that essentially defines the human experience: kinship. As we define it here, kinship is the deep, empathetic bond formed by early humans sharing resources, providing mutual safety, and establishing a communal culture. You see, kinship in this era wasn't strictly about sharing DNA. It was the invention of a chosen family based entirely on mutual reliance. It was born out of profound practical necessity that, over countless nights sitting around that glowing hearth, forged a deep, empathetic psychological connection. This is the era where individuals literally ceased to be a me and officially became a we. It's a shift that fundamentally separates us from so many other species.
Shared preparation of food, sustained eye contact and trust, protection from the elements, and the birthplace of shared culture. Let's break down exactly why this communal phase around the hearth changed absolutely everything for our species. First up, food prep. Cooking wasn't just, a culinary preference. Actually, it was a literal evolutionary hack. Cooked food meant massively more calories and way less energy spent chewing, which directly fueled the dramatic physical expansion of our neocortex, our thinking brain. Second, sustained eye contact. Sitting in a circle forces you to read facial expressions, which deepens trust. Third, protection. The fire created a literal, glowing circle of safety against the terrors of the dark. And finally, because of all these factors combined, the hearth became the undisputed birthplace of shared culture. This is where stories were first told, where knowledge was passed down, and where human rituals actually began.
The legacy of family. Just think about the staggering magnitude of that shift for a moment. We've moved from the freezing, vulnerable silence of isolation to the warm, communicative safety of the group. And this brings us to our legacy. The bonds forged in those ancient caves and campsites didn't just help us survive the Ice Age, they completely rewired our brains to actively crave connection. The brain began utilizing hormones like oxytocin, which you might know as the cuddle chemical. This evolved specifically to reward us with feelings of warmth, safety, and happiness whenever we are physically close to our tribe. The emotional legacy of those early bonds is the very biological foundation of what makes us human today. Just look at the genuine joy, the unmistakable warmth on these faces under the night sky. We are seeing the family unit in full bloom. Children are smiling, they are safely nestled by the fire, utterly protected while the wild animals roam in the distant background. The profound emotional reward of discovering family is vividly alive right here. They aren't just white-knuckling it through the night hoping to survive. They are actually enjoying each other's company. They've found comfort, they've found laughter, and they have cemented a deep, irreplaceable connection that somehow makes the harshness of the ancient world bearable.
So, we started on the left with the tense, cold reality of solitary survival, a terrifying life of absolute silence, constant fear, and overwhelming vulnerability. But through shared struggle, we achieved what we see on the right, the warm, secure joy of a communal night under the stars. We completely transformed from being one small, terrified creature pitted against a massive, hostile world to becoming a vibrant, interconnected tribe, a true family. We survived because we learned how to cooperate, we figured out how to communicate, and ultimately we unlocked the incredible capacity to love and care for one another.
Which leaves us with this final, powerful thought. Our ancestors survived the absolute darkness of the ancient world by finding each other. They built a fire, and from that fire, they built a family. That ancient, deeply biological need for connection, forged over thousands and thousands of years, is still inside every single one of us right now. So, I want you to ask yourself, who is around your fire today? Who makes up your tribe? Take a moment to deeply appreciate them, because connection is, and absolutely always has been, our greatest human triumph. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I will see you next time.